Right, well, we have a scene change here. I will just do some quick introductions. Again, your full bios are on the back of your program. Thank you, Dr. Zimfer. That was fabulous, and I think we'll now get to see how that all applies here in Illinois. So let me start by introducing Dr. K. Edward Copeland, who is pastor of the New Zion Baptist Church in Rockford and the former governing board chairman of Alignment Rockford. He also serves on the board of Advance Illinois. Dr. Aaron Jarrett, has been superintendent of Rockford Public Schools since 2013. He's a member of the Alignment Rockford Governing Board and the board of directors for the Rockford Area Economic Development Council. Anisha Grimmett became executive director of Alignment Rockford in 2017. She previously worked for 20 years in various engineering and leadership roles with the UTC Aerospace Systems. She's a graduate of Auburn High School in Rockford. So I'm going to just ask some questions. First, we're going to explain Alignment Rockford and what they do, talk about some of the progress they've made, and then ask people to think about how this might apply in this new world of ESSA that we have. So let me start with Reverend Copeland. You were there at the beginning, founding of Alignment Rockford. What led to its creation and focus on education? And who is Alignment Rockford? And tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so Alignment Rockford started in 2009 after a group of individuals in our community, some of the usual suspects that were concerned about education. We had just finished an initiative to try to get charter schools in Rockford, but we realized charter schools were not a panacea. It was just something that we thought would add to the portfolio, but we recognized that part of our problem was that we had a systemic problem. There was something wrong with the system. So we commissioned a lady named Lori Priest, who became our first executive director, to do an environmental scan across the country to see who was actually dealing with systemic transformation, because we recognized that we could either keep on polishing up flat tires, or we could get some brand new tires that had some tread on them, see if we can move forward. She came across Alignment Nashville that had been collecting business leaders, civic organizations, higher educational institutions to get behind the public school and to do solution design. We bugged and stalked Alignment Nashville until they adopted us, and we became the second community to adopt their model, which basically is, to Dr. Zimfer's point, a solution design model that takes the human capital in a community, leverages it to get behind the public schools in a way that is nonpartisan, in a way that we stay out of the way, and we let the experts tell us what the problem is that needs to be solved, and then we use a disciplined process to come up with a solution, model it. If it works, scale it up, and then find a way to institutionalize it so that it becomes part and parcel of the district's model moving forward. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's great, thank you. Superintendent Jarrett, can you pick up the story from here? How has your work as part of Alignment Rockford led to changes in Rockford Public Schools? Sorry, we have to share a microphone.
The change has been transformational. Just to give you a perspective of where we started, I came in about 2 years later. I'd lived in the community but worked in another district, so I arrived on the scene in 2011, and we got our annual survey results from the Rockford Area Economic Development Council, and our favorability rating came in at 3% approval in the region from the business community when they were surveyed, and I thought, boy, that is bad. And then I looked into the data, and I realized we are in the Economic Development Council, and I think we voted for ourselves. So I think we were literally actually at zero. So the relationship between the community, the business community, the students we served was incredibly fractured. So I don't think we can underestimate the power of the work that Dr. Copeland and some of the folks that came together around this. They weren't starting charter schools in Rockford just because they thought it was a nice idea. It was an act of desperation at that point. They didn't feel like the school community was listening to the business community or to our families and parents. We were so disconnected. And it was really inspiring to come into that situation and to start the work. And it's been slow, tough, painstaking work. But what's happened, the biggest success, and I can talk about a lot of academic successes and specific programs we've done, but I think the biggest thing that started to happen is that as the community has come together to support our schools, everyone feels differently about the work. We are celebrating those incremental wins that referred to in the previous presentation. Our most recent data from 2 years ago, we were up to 35% support from the business community. Now, normally I wouldn't be on a panel bragging about 35% support, but when it was 0, that gives you a sense of how far things have come. Our graduation rates are nowhere near where we want them to be, but they're up substantially. The opportunities that students and parents receive, we passed 2 referendums to improve our facilities, but ultimately what happened is, instead of everybody lining up to blame each other for why the schools were so terrible, everyone rolled up their sleeves and said, what can we do to turn this thing around together? And so I was the recipient as a new superintendent, but having deep roots in the community and the beneficiary of the work of Alignment Rockford. I think they were a key catalyst and continue to be a key catalyst in all of the work that we're doing to transform education. What got interesting was one of the first experiences I had with Alignment Rockford, being the brilliant superintendent that I was to try to tell them not to do the most important initiative that we did. I thought it was a bad idea. We were going to redesign our high schools, and I was the educational expert, and I went to the person who funded Alignment Rockford and said, you have to kill this thing. They're trying to tell us to redesign our high schools, and I don't think we're ready to do that. And the power of the process really worked. We really worked together to work through some of those initial anxiety and challenges. I went to Nashville and had a chance to see some things they did. And when we redesigned our high schools, it brought our community together in a really, really substantial and meaningful way. And I give so much credit to the business community and to our larger community that supported the work.
So just take a minute and explain how you redesigned the high school, just so folks have some more context.
We had very traditional high schools that were organized in a very traditional 9th through 12th grade way. We worked with Ford Motor Company, and we are now the third, we were the third model community now in the country. That was 2 years ago, received that designation. And basically what we've done with our high schools is we have a freshman academy and then 4 different wall-to-wall academies that are the same in all 4 of our high schools. And all of our students, what's different about a Rockford educational experience primarily is that our students enter into a smaller learning community around their area of interest, and they choose a 3-year pathway of courses that instead of just taking only exploratory electives, they take a 3-year sequence of electives in addition to exploratory electives that culminate with college credit and/or a career certification. And here's the bottom line. What was powerful is you can't do that work without a backbone agency like Alignment Rockford, because what we immediately encountered is if we want to have all of our students having internship experiences, having the chance to have this massive Academy Expo, we went from having about 2,000 community volunteers in our school to 10,000 over a 7-year period. We're nearly $2 million in a community our size of volunteer work, and that's the engine that it takes to fuel a redesigned high school system. If all you're doing is just reshuffling where the teachers teach, you're not going to change anything. What high school redesign has really been about is inviting our teachers in to the business community to learn about that work, and it's also been about getting our students and our teachers out into the business community as well and strengthening that partnership. So love to talk more about it, but I know we have a lot of other topics to get to.
That's great, thank you. Anisha, you bring a lot of different perspectives to the work. So let's just start first. You know, you've been a successful graduate of the Rockford Public Schools, a business leader, and now executive director of Alignment Rockford. Why is the work of Alignment Rockford important to you, just from a personal perspective?
Yeah, I have this. It reminds me of Bob Barker. So personally, the reason why the work of Alignment is near and dear to my heart because I am part of that Alignment story. Not that Alignment was around when I graduated from high school. I'm a lot older than that. But I am the result of when a community, business community, partners with a non-for-profit that partners with the public school system, what can happen. I graduated from Auburn High School in 1995. I didn't really know what I really wanted to do leaving high school, people told me, hey, I think you should go into engineering because you like to take things apart. You know, I love how to solve problems. I hated math, so that was part of a problem. And I felt that engineers walked around with pocket protectors, and that was not me, right? And so I was just kind of like, I don't think that's a good fit for me. And so I went ahead and still applied to go to school to be part of an engineering program. And I received a scholarship from a local nonprofit, Rockford Area Minority Management. And they had a partnership with Sunstrand, which is an aerospace company. At the time, they're now known as UTC Aerospace Systems. And it was anyone who was going into engineering got a chance to have an internship at Sunstrand. So right out of high school, first day of summer, I was in Sunstrand working on their manufacturing plant, a floor. And that's when I realized that engineering could be amazing and that it was a great fit for me. I never left until I joined Alignment Rockford last year in October 2017. The relationships that I developed, the exposure that I received to different careers just within engineering alone. I've had various roles within that company. We've gone through 3 different names since then, but my last role was in human resources and talent development. And I really realized then is that the need for our company at the time to get back involved in the community and to help the public school systems develop our future pipeline, our future talent. So I am I say a success story of when that happens, because if that opportunity was not available for me, maybe I wouldn't be here today. I definitely probably wouldn't have chosen engineering as a career, and we know that exposure is key. Kids don't know what they don't know, right? So it's up to us to expose them to those experiences and to help guide them along the way. So I didn't know, and I'm glad I got that opportunity to know.
And do you want to just say more, as in your role in the business community as head of HR talent, what you were seeing and why bringing your company as part of Alignment Rockford was so important?
So in that talent development area, we were seeing that we were getting entry-level employees into our business that weren't up to some of the standards that we were expecting. More so maybe in the as far as having experiences, and then as well as the soft skills. We had to incorporate a lot of training programs for the entry-level employees just on appropriate etiquette within a corporate culture, which things to our surprise, we felt they should have learned either in college or in high school, right? And so we saw that they were lacking, a lot of other skills as well that we were needing. Also, recruiting to Rockford can be tough. We're competing with Chicago, Milwaukee, those other bigger cities within the Midwest. And so we found that we would go out and recruit across the country for new and diverse talent, but it was hard to retain them because of the size of the community and what people were really truly looking for in the area. And so, like I said, I never left. And I'm not the only person that grew up in Sunstrand and in UTC Aerospace Systems that are from Rockford. And so we were looking into the strategy of, kind of helping to develop that talent and reaching back into our own community to hire. And so that was part of that aspect and strategy as well.
Great. Nancy, before I come back to you, let me just ask Reverend Copeland, Aaron, what do you think is the biggest success so far of Alignment Rockford?
2 or 3 things from my perspective. One is the tone and tenor of our conversation about education in the community has changed. It used to be so raucous that we couldn't get anything done because everybody was pointing fingers, everybody was blaming somebody else, but through a disciplined process and through the strategies and the tactics that we have used. Plus, when we started, we had a public meeting where we had a big board of that listed the principles we were going to operate by, and we made everybody sign it. And we keep that board every meeting we have, so when anybody tries to get out of line, we can say, you know, you signed this, and this is how we're going to operate. And we do have to check people sometimes. Our mantra is check your guns at the door, and when you come in this setting, we're about supporting the strategic plan of the public school system. So it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, I'm independent, it doesn't matter if you're Baptist, Presbyterian, we don't care anything about that. Here's what we're getting ready to do, here's how we're going to do it. So the biggest success from my perspective has been to change the conversation. So it's no longer acceptable in our community to point fingers at somebody. You have to lock arms with somebody. Secondly, I think we've leveraged limited resources, because part of the reason, I didn't say this, but let me say it now, part of the reason we started Alignment Rockford is because we knew Superman wasn't gonna come to save us. If we're gonna save ourselves, we better use what we have right here and figure out how to make some gumbo out of it. For those of you who are not familiar with gumbo, gumbo started when somebody didn't have enough of one thing, so they took everything they did have and made a delicious delicacy out of it. So that's been our success, leveraging limited resources to get maximum impact without looking for outside saviors.
The one thing I would add is we've started to make progress in a lot of different academic indicators. Graduation rate is improving, our attendance rate, our student discipline, our ECT, now SAT scores of advanced placement participation. Those are all modestly improving. I agree that the tenor is huge. But one of the things that I think we're really starting to address, and Anisha referred to it and so did Dr. Copeland, and that's this idea of we live in a community where we really face an existential threat, that our best and brightest are going to be leaving us for greener pastures, and our best and brightest companies are going to be leaving us for greener pastures. So we either have to find a way to marry those two assets and really create an unbreakable bond, or we will lose the talent game, and we will lose the jobs game, and we will ultimately die a slow, painful Midwestern death in Rockford, Illinois. And I want to have no part of that. So one of the things we've been able to do through this model, only with the support of the business community and all of our families working together, is we've started to build a 4-step model for connecting students with, and our talented students with a reason to stay home with our really, really talented companies that provide employment. So we are the second largest employer in the region as the school system. So we decided to eat our own cooking. And we created something to create teachers. Many of you know we face a very, very significant teacher shortage, but we also are in a community where we are about a third white, a third Hispanic, and a third African American, and yet our teacher population looks nothing like that. It's mostly female and it's mostly Caucasian. We could go all around the country trying to out-recruit people, but if you look at statistics across the country, that's who goes into teaching pretty much everywhere across the country. And we were not winning those recruiting battles because people find out what the temperature is in January in Rockford, Illinois, or in April, and we just didn't win many of those battles. So what we did is we took our recruiting budget and we partnered with Rockford University, and we create a very unique partnership. And I'm really proud of this work, not only because of how it's going to impact RPS in our own talent pool, but it's going to be a model for other areas as well. But what we do is we take our 6th, 7th, 8th grade students, 9th grade students, and get as many of them as we can excited about education. And then they get into one of those 3-year sequence of courses called a pathway, and they take a 10th, 11th, and 12th grade course. And by the time they're done with high school, we've had a couple hundred students go through that sequence, and they culminate with a dual credit course at Rockford University in Ed Psych, and they get some basic experiences around kids. And then what happens is, if out of that group, Rockford University, which costs $31,000 a year, discounts their tuition for our students down to $5,000 a year. So we give them a $100,000 scholarship, and we have 20 students per year that do that. How do we pay for that? We don't. What we do is we guarantee Rockford University that every year we're going to run a master's in urban education for our employees, which we can totally legally do. And so what we end up doing is each year we have 20 students go through that, and we have our second cohort. We're really proud of it. We have 20. 50% of that cohort is Latino. We still have a lot of work to do with African American and getting the male ratio where we want, but we think if we want to have a teaching force that reflects the quality, talent, and diversity of our community, let's recruit in our own community. They're right there, but we have to recruit them. We can't wait till they're seniors in high school. So what this model allows us to do is then hire those students, pay for their master's degree. So our proposition is stay in Rockford and you have a $150,000 scholarship. Now the power of this is not just what we're going to do for teachers, which is huge, but we're going to do this for engineers. We're going to do this for police officers. We're going to do this for whatever the top needs are in our community. That's how we're going to do the work. Our goal is to have 14 of these pathways in place. And that is the power of alignment, because other than the teacher pathway, which we wanted to have in place as a model, we can't do any of this work without our partners. We need a higher ed partner. We need a business community partner. We just happen to play multiple roles in this particular equation, but we are really excited about that as an early win with this work.
So what's next, Anisha? What is the next thing that you're taking on as your role in Alignment Rockford?
So Alignment Rockford, we primarily focus on the bookends of education. So we focus on early childhood, from birth to third grade, and then the high schools, which Dr. Jarrett has kind of talked about that. And so in the high school framework, we're working on a work-based learning continuum to help ensure that all of our high school students have some type of career awareness or career learning experience at each grade level. And so that takes a lot of partnerships within the local community in order to make that happen. All of our ninth graders will be receiving, or actually they're already receiving, the Academy Expo, which is a career exploration. Last year in 2017, on my third day, we had the Academy Expo where we had all of the freshmen attending this huge event with over 100 business partners, had booths set up, kind of talking about their careers, and had hands-on activities for all of the kids. It was all divided by their academies as well, and it was great. It was a great time. I was excited. I think I may have found my third career. But it was just exciting to see the business community as a whole come together and be excited about sharing what they do at work, and how kids can kind of relate to what they're doing in the classrooms to what they'll be doing in the real world. So, of course, the kids were allowed to ask questions, things like, how much do you make? Because that's always important. But it was just a great interaction between the business community and the kids. Sophomore year, all students will receive sophomore site visits. So it allows a group of students to go to a business site to kind of see what the workplace looks like, right? So if you're if you're interested in manufacturing, engineering, say you take a trip to UTC Aerospace Systems and you get a chance to explore and take a tour of the site, as well as to go onto the manufacturing floor to see how they put together IDGs, ESGs, things like that. So it's quite eye-opening for them as well. The teachers attend as well, so it's great for them to see how they can kind of connect with the students and bring some relevancy to what they're learning in the classrooms. Junior year will be the job shadow experience. So it'll be each experience, as you can see, kind of builds on the other. And so it'll be a smaller group of students that get a chance to actually shadow an employee in a career where they have a lot more opportunity to ask one-on-one. And then senior year, outlining some type of apprenticeship or internship for all of the students. So once again, it's for all students. So we have a lot of connections to make within the community. This is a community effort, right? We can't do it alone. The school systems can't do it alone. It has to be an engaged partnership, right? And so we're working on building that out now. So that's in the high school space. On the early childhood space, our 2 Healthy Starts teams have pilot programs going on now. One is focusing on the effects of parent and child engagement, how that helps to develop a child's brain early on. And so we have several play groups that are being piloted in various places to help increase that interaction, to help with the kindergarten readiness metric as well. And then we have another effort called our single point of entry card. What we realized within our area is that not only case managers for families were having a hard time navigating our social services, so getting access to services that they need, such as food, housing, things like that, daycare. And so they have a hard time navigating because there's so many different organizations. Who do I go to for the best quality? And so what we are piloting right now is our community partners have to step up to the plate to be the single point of entry for food for the entire community, the single point of entry for housing for the entire community. And that takes a lot of working together, putting your agenda at the door and understanding what is the greater good, right? What are you working towards? And that's to be able to provide these services for families. So those are some of the big initiatives that we're working on at the moment.
That's great. I want to turn now to a slightly different topic because I think this has been really clear picture of the kinds of things that are happening in Rockford. So under ESSA, we know schools, the new rating system's being developed and schools are being assessed and performance data is going to be coming out. So under this new accountability system, when data comes out in the fall and the new report card's available, and some schools inevitably, maybe in Rockford, maybe not, will need to have supports provided because they're not performing. Nancy, can you just help us start to think about this? How do the practices of collective impact and what could be happening in a community inform what you might do in this new world under ESSA and really trying to provide supports to schools to succeed?
Well, first of all, I have to just say how incredibly impressed I am with what we've heard. And actually, who wouldn't want to be a superintendent in a community where this many people care about your success? This is a recruitment vehicle, you know? And even if you didn't know what was being developed, you certainly appreciate the support you have now in this broad community. Well, this might be sacrilegious, but I wouldn't let ESSA, ESSA, ESA be too much of a driver. It takes you back to this is only about the schools. It is not only about the schools, because if you look at birth rates and prenatal care and the misdiagnosis on many occasions that pediatricians give, or the lack of handoff between the pediatrician and the early childhood educators, and I could go on and on all the way through the pipeline, this is every component's issue. And ESSA, once again, returns the federal investment or interest to one cog, a big one, a huge one, where you live. But it helps other people not take responsibility. Do you see what I mean? So I think it's much more important to be clear what your goals are, to know what indicators you are measuring, and this merger or integration of social agencies, social work, healthcare, transportation, homelessness, this broadens the investment of the community. So what I mean is I probably wouldn't go to Washington and say this, and I do know that the state education department in Illinois and New York and Ohio has all this responsibility, but it's just not the only set of metrics. So it's not a negative, it's a positive. Make your own metrics, give your own report of what matters most to Rockford, and you know what? It'll probably meet the needs of ESSA. So you might not have expected that answer, and I do know that when I read what I was supposed to do, I was supposed to think about that, but I'm just pretty convinced it's too narrow.
That's great. Yeah. Do you want to comment just on how Alignment Rockford sees it, please?
Yeah, so all of these tools are just like diagnostic tools you would get when you go to the doctor. I mean, they might take an x-ray, they might take MRI, they might take a CAT scan or whatever, but to the doctor's point, all the systems of our body work together, and to the extent that the public school system has a strategic plan that they have already sort of crafted, and they know the metrics we need to move forward, that's what Alignment Rockford is going to focus on in terms of solution design, because we recognize that this whole thing is not just complicated, it's complex. Complicated is doing space shuttle stuff, which is what Anisha used to do. Complex is getting people to act right. That's what I had to do as a pastor. And so when you try to attack a complex problem as if it's just complicated, meaning just using these metrics or using this tool or whatever, you're not going to come out with the right solution. So we're going to take that information and put it in the portfolio of all the other metrics that we're looking at so that we can check to make sure that, you know, we're reading our metrics right. But ultimately, we have a strategic plan that we're going to pursue, and we have a goal of providing for movement and student achievement and health and happiness within our community that we're not going to get off of. That's been our success, I believe, is a focused determination to stay true to our mission and to not deviate regardless of whoever's in charge. You're our fourth superintendent, I believe, since we started Alignment Rockford. I'm the third pastor in 94 years at the church I pastor. So chances are I'm going to be here for a while, and so we're just going to stay the course.
Great. Dr. Jarrett, did you want to comment? No way. Not going to follow that. Anisha, did you want to comment just in this context? Great. So let me turn it back to Nancy, and then see if anyone has any kind of final remarks. So what do you know now that you wish you knew then? What advice would you give for folks getting started in this work and in this context?
Well, I think it's just going to take a lot of iterations. And I would say, Dr. Copeland, you've seen those revolutions and iterations and not be afraid of it and not feel like it's going to fall apart. What happened to us is we started with 20 or 30 people, and before you know it, we were at 200. Now, 200's great, but you can't make decisions with 200. So finally, you have to decide who are the decision makers in the community. It doesn't mean they all have to be grass tops. They can be grassroots or any other language you want to use to say a neighborhood developer is just as important as the mayor or the superintendent or whomever. But you know what, folks? We have to make some decisions here. We need leadership, and we need continuity, and it doesn't always come from one source. So when I left Cincinnati, there was a lot of, oh my God, what are we going to do? And unfortunately, they survived my departure. And they just went right into 2.0, and life goes on. So don't be fearless, just be disciplined. This is disciplined work. And that's why when people say, oh, we do that, I go, do you really do that? Because I think it's really hard, and it's a long road. So I can't say enough about how vivid the picture is that you've painted.
And obviously, we hope it's very exciting to all of you, and we think this has just been a great discussion of what can happen when the communities come together to focus on improving schools and the community as a whole. So thank our panelists and Dr. Zim for being here. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next year. And hopefully more leadership communities will be joining us as well. Thank you, and have a good evening.
You have to fill this room with data. Make them do a data walk.